You are 16 years old, standing on a rocky beach in western Norway in the spring of 793, and you're watching your father and older brother prepare the long ship for departure. The ship is beautiful in a way that makes your chest tight with longing. 30 meters of oak, clinker built with overlapping planks, the prow carved into a snarling dragon's head that's meant to terrify spirits and enemies alike. Shields line the sides, painted in alternating red and yellow, and the sail, when raised, will show horizontal stripes of red wool that cost your family a fortune. This ship represents years of labor, the combined wealth of your father and 2 of his brothers, built over 3 winters by the best shipwright in the region. And this summer, for the first time, you'll be sailing on her. Your name is Bjorn, son of Eric, and you come from a farmstead in the fjords where your family grows barley and oats and raises sheep and cattle. The farm is adequate, produces enough to feed the family and pay the required tributes to the local jarl, but it's not large, and you're the youngest of 3 sons. Your oldest brother Leif will inherit the farm when your father dies. Your middle brother Orm is already married and farming a small plot given to him by your mother's family. You get nothing. This is the reality for younger sons across Scandinavia. The land is divided enough already, farms are getting smaller with each generation, and there's simply not enough good land to go around. Your options are limited. Remain on the family farm as essentially a laborer working for your brother. Try to find unused land to clear and farm in some remote valley where the soil is poor and the winters deadly, or go Viking. Going Viking. The term means going raiding, going adventuring, going to seek your fortune across the sea with violence and cunning and luck. It's dangerous, possibly suicidal, but it's also the only path available for a young man with no inheritance to gain wealth, reputation, and the respect necessary to attract a good wife. Your father went Viking in his youth, raided the Frisian coast, and came back with enough silver to buy additional land and marry your mother, who came from a family of some standing. Your uncle has gone Viking every summer for 15 years and has a hoard of silver buried somewhere on his land that everyone knows about but no one has seen. These success stories are what every young man hears, though people talk less about the ones who never came back, the ones who drowned in storms or died on English beaches with Saxon spears in their guts. You've been preparing for this summer your entire life, though the preparation intensified over the past 3 years once you were old enough to be considered seriously. Your father taught you weapons, the axe primarily because swords are expensive and rare, the property of wealthy men and jarls. You've practiced with the axe until the movements are automatic, the swing and recovery, the footwork, the way to hook an opponent's shield and create an opening. You've learned the spear, which is easier and often more practical, especially in the close quarters of a shield wall. You've trained with your shield, a round piece of linden wood with an iron boss in the center, learning how to overlap it with your neighbor's shields, how to punch with the boss, how to use it as a weapon and not just protection. But weapons training is only part of it. You've learned navigation from your uncle, how to read the sun and stars, how to use a sunstone to find the sun's position even on cloudy days, how to read the color of water and the flight of birds to know when land is near. You've learned the ship itself, how to row for hours without exhausting yourself, how to raise and lower the sail, how to bail water, how to beach the ship quickly when arriving at a raid target. You've learned the social dynamics of a ship's crew, the hierarchy, the importance of reputation and courage, the absolute necessity of being reliable in combat, because your life will depend on the men beside you, and theirs will depend on you. Your father has been evaluating you for 3 years, watching to see if you have the courage and strength and cunning necessary for raiding. Going Viking isn't just about being able to fight, it's about having the right temperament. You need courage, obviously, the ability to charge into combat when every instinct screams to run, but you also need discipline, the ability to follow orders and maintain your position in the shield wall even when terrified. You need cunning, the intelligence to recognize danger and opportunity. You need physical endurance, the capacity to row for hours, to go hungry, to function on minimal sleep. And you need luck, though luck isn't something you can train for, just something you pray to the gods to provide. Last week your father finally told you that you'd be coming on this summer's raid. The relief was overwhelming. You've seen boys your age denied, told they're not ready, and the shame of it marks them. Being chosen means your father believes you're capable, believes you won't disgrace yourself and the family name, believes you might actually survive and return. Your mother's reaction was more complicated. She's proud, you can tell, but also terrified. She's lost friends, sons to the sea, watched mothers weep when their boys didn't come home. She held you tightly the night before the departure and made you swear to be careful, to not take stupid risks, to remember that silver isn't worth your life. But you both know that stupid risks are inherent to the enterprise, that raiding is by definition dangerous, that men die doing this. The crew is assembling now, 35 men in total, a mix of experienced raiders and younger men like yourself, making their first or second voyage. You recognize most of them: your father, your uncle Thorstein, who captains the ship, your older brother Leif, who's gone on 2 raids before, several neighbors and distant cousins. There are a few men you don't know, warriors with reputations from other districts who've been recruited because they're skilled fighters. The social dynamics are already visible. The experienced men are confident, joking and laughing, checking their weapons with casual expertise. The younger men, the ones on their first raid, are quieter, trying to hide their nervousness, watching the veterans to learn how to behave. You're carrying everything you own that matters. Your axe, which your father gave you on your 15th birthday, the iron head fitted to an ash handle, the edge honed sharp enough to split hairs. Your shield, painted with your own design, a simple black raven on a white background. A spear, because spears are cheaper than swords and often more useful. A knife at your belt, essential for everything from eating to cutting rope to close combat. Your sea chest, a wooden box that contains your spare clothes, a wool cloak, a whetstone for sharpening your axe, a tinderbox, and not much else. The sea chest will serve as your rowing bench and your only private storage for the entire voyage. Your father has given you a mail shirt, which is extraordinary. Mail is expensive, each ring individually riveted, thousands of hours of work from a skilled smith. Most men fight in leather armor or just thick wool tunics. Having mail marks you as someone whose family has resources, whose father has been successful enough to equip his son properly. The weight of it on your shoulders is substantial, 15 kilograms of iron rings, but you've been wearing it around the farm for weeks to get accustomed to the burden. In combat, this mail could save your life, turn a killing blow into a bruise, and you're intensely aware of what it represents. Your father's success, your family's investment in your survival, the expectation that you'll prove worthy of such equipment. The morning is cold and grey, typical for Norwegian spring, and there's a wind from the east that will help you sail west toward the open ocean. The ship is being loaded with supplies: barrels of water and ale, sacks of dried fish and hard bread, some preserved meat, spare oars, rope, tar for repairs, weapons, everything necessary for a voyage that might last weeks or months. There's no specific destination decided yet. The plan, as explained by your Uncle Thorstein, is to sail west to the Shetland Islands, then down past Orkney toward the Scottish coast, and possibly to the islands of Ireland. They'll be looking for opportunities: undefended monasteries, wealthy farmsteads, small settlements that can be hit quickly before local forces can respond. Flexibility is important. Rigid plans get you trapped or ambushed. You go where opportunity appears and where the winds and currents take you. The ship has no deck, just the open hull with rowing benches, which means you'll be exposed to weather the entire voyage. There's a small tent that can be erected if conditions are particularly bad, but mostly you'll just endure rain, spray, cold, and sun with no protection except your cloak. You'll sleep on the rowing benches or on the beach when the ship is pulled ashore at night, curled against your sea chest with your cloak wrapped around you. Privacy doesn't exist. you'll be living in intimate proximity with 34 other men, eating together, sleeping side by side, pissing over the side of the ship in full view of everyone, existing in a state of constant exposure and mutual dependence. Your father pulls you aside before boarding, and his expression is serious in a way that makes your stomach clench. This is it, the final advice before your first raid, the words you'll remember when you're terrified and exhausted and wondering why you thought this was a good idea. He grips your shoulders hard enough to hurt and looks you directly in the eyes. Listen to me carefully. Your first raid, you're going to be terrified. Everyone is terrified their first time. The fear doesn't make you a coward, it makes you sane. But you can't let it control you. When we beach the ship and charge, you run with us. You don't hesitate, you don't stop, you follow the man in front of you and you keep your shield up. In combat, stay in formation. Don't run ahead to prove your courage. Don't fall behind because you're afraid. Stay with the line. The men beside you are what keeps you alive. He pauses, making sure you're absorbing this, then continues. If you get separated, if things go wrong and you find yourself alone, get back to the ship. The ship is safety. We won't leave without you unless we absolutely have to. But if we're forced to push off and you're not aboard, you're dead or captured and sold as a slave. So fight your way back to the ship no matter what. Most important, don't try to be a hero. Heroes die. Heroes do stupid things for glory and get killed for it. I'm not sending you on this raid to die gloriously and go to Valhalla. I'm sending you to gain experience, to earn some silver, to build a reputation so you can eventually marry and start your own household. Dead men can't marry. Dead men can't have sons to continue the family line. I want you back alive. Understand? You nod, your throat too tight to speak. Your father pulls you into a brief, fierce embrace, then releases you and turns away before emotion can show on either face. This is the Viking way. Love expressed through action rather than words, through the gift of mail armor and weapons training and the opportunity to prove yourself, not through displays of sentiment that might be seen as weakness. Your mother doesn't come to the beach. Women don't usually attend the departure of raiding ships. It's considered bad luck. And besides, the goodbyes have already been said privately. You think of her back at the farmstead, probably watching from a distance, trying not to think about the fact that this might be the last time she sees her youngest son alive. The statistical reality is grim. Perhaps 1 in 5 young men on their first raid doesn't come back. Drowning, combat, disease, accidents. The ways to die are numerous. Your mother has already lived through your father's raiding years, has already experienced the anxiety of wondering whether he'd return each autumn. Now she gets to experience it all over again with her sons. The ship is ready. Thorstein, your uncle, and the ship's captain, calls everyone aboard. You climb over the side, stepping carefully to avoid tripping on oars and gear, and find your assigned rowing position on the starboard side, 3rd bench from the bow. Your sea chest is already in place, and you sit on it, testing the position, making sure you can row comfortably. The man in front of you is Gunnar, a warrior of about 30 who's been on a dozen raids. He glances back at you and nods, acknowledging your presence but offering no particular welcome. You're unproven, potentially a liability, not yet someone worth befriending. The ship is pushed off the beach, and men leap aboard as she slides into deeper water. Oars are unshipped and lowered into the water. Thorstein takes his position at the steering oar in the stern, and at his command you begin to row. The rhythm is called by the lead rower, a steady beat that everyone matches, pulling together, the oars dipping and rising in unison. The ship glides forward, responsive and alive, moving with a grace that seems impossible for something so large and heavy. You're rowing out of the fjord, past familiar landmarks, past the boundary between the known and the unknown. Behind you is your childhood, your family, safety, the farm where you've spent every day of your life. Ahead is the open ocean, foreign shores, violence, treasure, reputation, death, or glory, or most likely some combination of all of these. You're 16 years old, you've never killed anyone, you've never been more than a day's walk from your farm, and you're about to become a Viking raider. The sail is raised once you're clear of the fjord, and the wind fills it, the ship leaping forward with new speed. The rowing stops, oars pulled in, and you can finally look around, really see what you've joined. 35 men, most with scarred hands and hard faces, warriors and adventurers and desperate younger sons, all gambling their lives for a chance at wealth. Some are singing a sailing song, others checking their weapons, a few already curling up to sleep. Your brother Leif catches your eye and grins, and there's something wild in his expression, an excitement that borders on madness. This is his third raid, and he's clearly addicted to it, to the adventure and violence and freedom of being at sea, answerable to no one but the ship's captain and the gods. The Norwegian coast recedes behind you, becoming a line of dark mountains against grey sky, and then even that disappears into the mist and distance. You're on the open ocean now, nothing but water in every direction, the ship rising and falling on swells that make your stomach uneasy. The wind is cold, and salt spray occasionally washes over the bow, soaking everyone in the forward benches. You're already wet, already uncomfortable, and this is just the beginning, just the voyage out. The actual raiding hasn't even started yet. You think about what's ahead, beaching on enemy shores, charging into villages, fighting men who'll be trying to kill you, taking plunder that doesn't belong to you, possibly killing people who've done nothing to you except have the misfortune of being in your path. The reality of it sits heavy in your stomach alongside the seasickness. You've been raised to believe that courage and martial prowess are the highest virtues, that gaining wealth and reputation through raiding is honorable, that this is simply what men do. But now, actually heading towards the reality of violence, you're experiencing doubts you can't voice without seeming weak. Your father told you everyone is terrified their first time. You hold on to that thought. The fear is normal. The doubt is normal. What matters is what you do despite the fear, whether you can function when the moment comes, whether you can stand in the shield wall and fight instead of running or freezing. You'll find out soon enough. Within a week, maybe 2, you'll be charging up some beach in Scotland or Ireland, and all the training and preparation will be tested against the reality of combat. The ship sails west through choppy grey water, heading toward whatever fortune or death awaits. You're a Viking raider now, whether you're ready or not. Your childhood ended the moment the ship left the beach. What comes next will either forge you into a warrior and a man, or kill you and leave your mother weeping and your father wondering if he made the right choice sending you. The wind holds steady from the east, the sail taut and pulling the ship forward, and somewhere ahead in the mist and distance is England, Scotland, Ireland, wealthy monasteries fat with treasure and undefended by anything except priests and prayers. Your first summer, your first raid, your first test. The dragon-prowed ship cuts through the waves, carrying you toward your future, whatever that might be. You've been at sea for 4 days now, and you understand why experienced raiders speak of the ocean with a mixture of respect and dread. The longship that looked so magnificent on the beach has become a cramped, miserable prison of wood and water. You're constantly wet, soaked by spray that comes over the bow with every larger wave, your clothes never drying in the damp North Atlantic air. Your hands are raw and blistered from rowing, the skin worn away where you grip the oar, bleeding and stinging with every pull. Your back aches from the constant work, muscles you didn't know you had, screaming in protest. And you're hungry, always hungry, because the rations are meager and the work burns through calories faster than the dried fish and hard bread can replace them. The ship itself is a marvel of engineering, you've come to understand, but it's designed for efficiency and speed, not comfort. She's called Wave Rider, though your Uncle Thorstein sometimes calls her Raven when he's drinking and nostalgic. 30 meters long, 5 meters wide at her broadest point, shallow drafted enough to navigate rivers and beach on sandy shores, but deep enough to handle open ocean swells. The hull is clinker-built, oak planks overlapping and riveted together with iron nails, caulked with tarred animal hair to keep the water out. The flexibility of this construction is what makes her seaworthy. The hull can twist and bend with the waves rather than fighting them, riding over swells that would swamp a more rigid vessel. But that flexibility means the ship is alive, constantly moving beneath you, creaking and groaning, water sloshing in the bilge that needs to be bailed regularly. You're on bail duty now, using a wooden scoop to transfer water from the bottom of the hull over the side. Mindless, repetitive work that at least gives your rowing muscles a rest. The water accumulates constantly, seeping through the caulking, coming over the sides in spray, rain when it falls, and it needs to be removed, or the ship gets sluggish and sits lower in the water. It's monotonous work that never truly ends, just temporarily stops when the bilge is acceptably dry. There's no privacy aboard Wave Rider. No personal space, no moment when you're not in intimate contact with 34 other men. You sleep on your rowing bench, your sea chest behind you as a pillow, your body wedged into the small space between benches, often with someone's foot near your face or their elbow in your ribs. The sleeping arrangements are terrible on calm nights and nearly impossible when the sea is rough, when the ship pitches and rolls, and you have to brace yourself to avoid being thrown from your bench. Most men sleep in their clothes because getting undressed in the open hull makes no sense, and besides, the clothes provide some minimal warmth against the constant wind. The smell is what no one warned you about. 35 men who haven't properly bathed in days, who are constantly wet with salt water and sweat, who piss over the side of the ship in full view of everyone and shit over the side as well, trying to hang on to the rail while the ship moves beneath you. The accumulated stench is overwhelming. You've grown somewhat accustomed to it by necessity, but in the first days you were constantly nauseous, though whether from the smell or the ship's motion or both, you couldn't say. Seasickness hit you on the second day, when the swells grew larger and the ship began its endless rise and fall, pitching forward and back, rolling side to side. Your stomach rebelled violently, and you vomited over the side while trying to maintain some dignity, aware that the experienced men were watching to see how you'd handle it. Several other young raiders were similarly affected, which was some comfort. Gunnar, the experienced warrior who rose ahead of you, told you matter-of-factly that seasickness passes for most men after a few days, that your body adjusts to the motion. He was right. By day 4, you're functional, though still vaguely queasy, able to eat and row and work without the overwhelming nausea. The rowing itself is grueling work that you weren't fully prepared for despite the practice. Each man has an oar, massive things of pine, 4 meters long, heavy and awkward. When the wind is favorable and the sail is up, the oars are shipped and you rest. But when the wind dies or shifts to the wrong direction, everyone rows. The rhythm is set by Arne, the lead rower, an enormous man with arms like tree trunks who's been going Viking for 20 years. He calls the stroke, a deep voice chanting a rhythm, and everyone pulls together, the oars dipping into the water, pulling through, lifting, swinging forward, dipping again. Pull, recover, pull, recover, an endless cycle that continues for hours. Your hands developed blisters on the first day. The blisters burst on the second day, leaving raw flesh that bled and stuck to the oar handle. By the third day, the wounds were starting to scab over, developing the calluses that every experienced rower has, thick pads of hardened skin that eventually make rowing less agonizing. But you're not there yet. You're still in the painful middle stage where every stroke hurts, where you have to force yourself to maintain the rhythm despite your body screaming at you to stop. The experienced men row with apparent ease, their faces showing no strain. But you and the other young raiders are obviously struggling, grimacing with each pull, falling slightly behind the rhythm before catching up. No one offers sympathy. This is simply what being at sea means, what you signed up for when you joined the crew. The veterans remember their own first voyages, their own bleeding hands and aching backs, and they know that you either adapt or you don't, but complaining won't help. Your brother Leif rows 2 benches behind you, and occasionally you hear him cursing under his breath, which is oddly comforting. He's done this before, twice, and he still finds it miserable, which means you're not weak for struggling. This is just genuinely hard. The sail is the ship's great advantage, a massive square of wool cloth dyed in horizontal red stripes, woven by the women of several households over 2 winters. When the wind is favorable, blowing from behind or at an angle from the side, the sail is raised on the single mast, and the ship leaps forward with a speed that rowing could never match. You can make 70 or 80 miles in a day under sail, covering distances that would take 3 days of rowing. The sail is controlled by a complex system of ropes and adjustments, work that the experienced men handle, reading the wind, trimming the sail to capture the maximum force, steering to maintain the best angle. But the wind is fickle and often unfavorable. The prevailing winds in the North Atlantic blow from west to east, which means sailing west toward raiding targets often requires rowing or tacking, sailing at an angle to the wind, and making a zigzag course that adds distance and time. There's nothing to do about this except endure it. Row when necessary, make progress however you can. Trust in Thorstein's navigation and the gods' favor. Navigation is more art than science, you're learning. Your Uncle Thorstein, standing at the steering oar in the stern, navigates by a combination of sun position during the day, star positions at night, wave patterns, the color of the water, the flight of seabirds, and experience accumulated over 15 years of raiding voyages. There are no maps in any useful sense, no instruments except a sunstone, a piece of calcite crystal that can locate the sun's position even on cloudy days by showing how light polarizes as it passes through the atmosphere. This sounds like magic, but it works, somehow, and Thorstein consults it regularly when the sun is obscured by clouds or fog. The course is roughly west-southwest, aiming for the Shetland Islands, a journey of perhaps 300 miles from the Norwegian coast. In good conditions, with favorable winds, this might take 3 or 4 days. In poor conditions, it can take a week or more. You're on day 4, and Thorstein believes you're getting close, reading signs in the water and the appearance of certain seabirds that only range so far from land. But there's been fog for the past day, thick grey mist that reduces visibility to a ship's length, and navigation becomes guesswork and prayer. The fog is eerie, isolating. The ship moves through grey nothing, water and sky merged into uniform blankness. The only sounds the creak of the hull, the splash of oars when rowing, the occasional call of a bird invisible in the mist. It's easy to imagine sea monsters in fog like this, the great serpents and krakens of the stories that supposedly lurk in the deep water, waiting to drag ships down. You don't really believe in such things, or at least you tell yourself you don't, but in the fog, with no landmarks visible, nothing but grey emptiness, the old fears surface despite your rational doubts. Food aboard is minimal and monotonous. Twice a day, morning and evening, rations are distributed from the supplies stored in barrels and sacks amidships. The morning meal is hard bread, dried to the point where it needs to be soaked in water or ale to be edible, along with dried fish. Cod or herring, salted and dried until it's like leather, requiring extensive chewing to break down. The evening meal is more of the same, with occasionally some dried meat, strips of pork or mutton that have been salted and smoked, flavorful but requiring even more chewing than the fish. There's ale, rationed carefully, and water in barrels, though the water is already starting to taste foul, taking on the wooden flavor of the barrels and beginning to develop the green algae that makes it unpleasant but not yet dangerous. The rations are calculated to keep 35 men alive and functional, not to satisfy hunger. You're always hungry, always wanting more, your body burning through calories from rowing and bailing, and the simple work of staying warm in the cold, damp air. The experienced raiders are accustomed to this constant hunger, treat it as normal, but you find yourself obsessing about food, fantasizing about your mother's stew, fresh bread, roasted meat, anything that isn't dried and salted and hard as wood. Water is carefully rationed because no one knows how long the voyage will take. You're allowed perhaps a liter a day for drinking, plus what you can soak your bread in. There's no water for washing, and the saltwater spray that constantly soaks you is actually dehydrating, the salt drawing moisture from your skin and mouth. Your lips are cracked and painful, your skin dry and rough despite being constantly wet, and there's nothing to be done about it except endure. At night, when conditions allow, the ship is often beached or anchored in a sheltered bay. Viking longships are designed to be beached, their shallow draft allowing them to run right up onto sandy or pebbly shores, and this is infinitely preferable to spending the night at sea. The routine is practiced and efficient. As the ship approaches shore, men prepare to jump out into the shallows, to grab the gunwales and help drag her up onto the beach. Once beached, the ship is secured with anchors or ropes tied to rocks or trees, and camp is established on shore. The relief of being on solid, unmoving ground after hours or days at sea is indescribable. Your legs are unsteady at first, your body still feeling the phantom motion of the ship, but gradually the solidity reassures you. A fire is built if wood is available and conditions permit, though fires are avoided when raiding enemy coasts where smoke might alert defenders. Food is prepared, the same dried rations, but somehow tasting better when eaten on land. Men check their equipment, sharpen weapons, make repairs to clothing and gear. Some venture into the nearby area to scout, to hunt if there's time, to look for fresh water sources to refill the barrels. The first island you beach on is uninhabited, a rocky outcrop somewhere between Norway and Shetland, barely large enough to support the camp, but offering shelter from the wind and a source of fresh water in a small stream. The island has seabirds nesting on the cliffs, and several men climb up to raid the nests, bringing back eggs that are distributed and eaten raw, a treat that provides nutrients missing from the dried rations. You're given 2 eggs, barely larger than chicken eggs, but with richer yolks, and you swallow them gratefully, the taste of something fresh and mildly disgusting from being raw, but welcome nonetheless. That night, sleeping on the beach with solid ground beneath you, you sleep better than you have since leaving Norway. The sounds are different. Waves on the shore instead of water sloshing in the bilge, wind in the rocks instead of through rigging. But the absence of constant motion is blissful. You wake at dawn to the boatswain's call, stiff and sore, but more rested than you've been in days. The interpersonal dynamics aboard the ship are becoming clearer as the days pass. There's a strict hierarchy, formal and informal. Thorstein is the captain, the ship's owner and ultimate authority. His word is law, and questioning it is unthinkable. Below him are the experienced warriors, men who've proven themselves on multiple raids, who have reputations and scars and the respect that comes from surviving. These men, Gunnar, Arn the lead rower, Kettle who's famous for killing 3 Saxons in single combat, others, form the core of the crew, the reliable fighters who'll be in the front ranks when raiding begins. Then there are the middling men, competent enough but not distinguished, making up the bulk of the crew. And finally, the young raiders like yourself, unproven, potentially valuable or potentially useless, not yet integrated into the crew's social fabric. You're watched constantly by the veterans, evaluated, judged on how you handle the work, the discomfort, the fear that sometimes crosses your face when the waves get large or the fog closes in. They're deciding whether you're reliable, whether you'll stand in the shield wall when the time comes, whether you're worth investing in or just another boy who'll panic and get himself or others killed. Your brother Leif is in a better position, having already proven himself in 2 raids. He moves more freely among the experienced men, joins their conversations, contributes to discussions about tactics and targets. You remain peripheral, listening when you can, trying to learn, but not yet invited to participate. This is fine. You understand you have to earn your place, that being Eric's son gives you a position on the ship but not automatic respect. Respect comes from action, from proven courage and competence, and you haven't had opportunity for either yet. The conversations you overhear are illuminating. The veterans discuss previous raids, comparing targets and strategies, arguing about which monasteries are wealthiest, which shores are most poorly defended, which tactics worked, and which got men killed. They talk about the English and the Scots and the Irish, categorizing them by how dangerous they are, how organized their defenses, how likely to pursue raiders. The general consensus seems to be that Irish monasteries are the best targets, wealthy from tithes and donations, usually isolated, defended only by monks who won't fight effectively, and Irish petty kingdoms are too fragmented and busy fighting each other to mount coordinated responses to raiders. You're learning the language of raiding, the vocabulary and concepts that define this world. A good target is one with portable wealth, silver, gold, quality weapons, valuable cloth, and minimal defenses. A bad target is one that's been raided recently and thus stripped of valuables, or one that's defended by warriors, or one that's in a location that makes escape difficult. Speed is essential. Get in, take what you can carry, get back to the ship before local forces can respond. Hesitation gets you trapped. Greed gets you killed when you linger too long loading treasure and warriors arrive. On the 5th day, the fog lifts and you see land ahead, dark humps of islands on the horizon, the Shetlands according to Thorstein. The sight raises spirits considerably. Men cheer, relief evident in their voices. 5 days at sea with no sight of land tests' nerves raises fears of being lost, and confirmation that Thorstein's navigation was accurate provides reassurance. The ship makes for the largest island, and by evening you're beaching in a protected bay on the southern shore. The Shetlands are rocky, wind-swept, barely vegetated islands that seem impossibly remote, perched in the North Atlantic between Norway and Scotland. There are people here, though not many, a mix of native inhabitants and Norwegian settlers. Your crew beaches on an isolated stretch where there's no settlement visible, setting camp carefully, posting guards, weapons near at hand even though you're not yet in enemy territory. Thorstein gathers the crew that evening for a discussion of plans. The Shetlands are a stopping point, a place to rest and resupply before continuing south to richer targets. The plan is to spend 2 days here, allowing everyone to recover from the voyage, then sail south to the Scottish coast, or possibly around to the Irish Islands, where the monasteries are wealthy and the defences weak. The target will be chosen based on weather, opportunity, what information can be gathered from locals about recent raids and defensive preparations. You sit in the gathering darkness, eating your ration of dried fish, listening to men discuss the raiding to come, and the reality settles over you that this voyage is transitioning from the ordeal of reaching the raiding grounds to the actual violence of raiding itself. Soon, maybe days from now, you'll beach on an enemy shore and charge into your first combat. The thought sits in your stomach like a stone, heavy and cold, and you're not sure if you're terrified or excited or both. Your brother Leif catches your eye across the fire and grins, the same wild expression you saw when the voyage began. He's looking forward to the raiding, to the violence and the plunder, and the test of himself. You wonder if you'll feel the same way once it begins, if the fear will transform into something else, into the battle joy that veterans speak of, or if you'll just be terrified the entire time and have to force yourself to function despite it. The fire burns down to embers. Men settle for sleep on the beach, wrapped in cloaks, weapons close at hand. The ship rests on the shore, the dragon prow silhouetted against the stars. And tomorrow you'll sail further into enemy waters, closer to the moment when everything you've trained for will be tested against the reality of combat. You're 5 days from Norway, 5 days from your old life, and you're beginning to understand that becoming a Viking raider isn't just about learning to fight. It's about enduring the ocean, the hunger, the exhaustion, the constant discomfort, and still being functional enough to fight when you reach your target. The ship and the sea are testing you just as surely as combat will, and you're not sure yet if you're passing the test or just surviving it through stubbornness. But you're still here, still aboard, still heading toward whatever awaits. That has to count for something. The waves lap at the shore. The stars wheel overhead. And somewhere to the south, wealthy monasteries sit undefended, waiting for dragon ships that will bring fire and death and terror in the name of silver and glory. You sleep, or try to, and dream of home. You wake to shouting and the sound of the ship being dragged back into the water. It's barely dawn, the sky grey and cold, and Thorstein is calling for everyone to board immediately. You scramble up from the beach where you'd been sleeping, grabbing your sea chest and weapons, still half asleep and confused about why the sudden urgency. The ship is already half in the water, men pushing her off the beach, and you wade into the shockingly cold surf and clamber aboard, finding your rowing position by instinct. The reason for the hasty departure becomes clear as you pull away from the Shetland shore. Thorstein has received information from a local fisherman, a Norwegian who settled here years ago, about a monastery on one of the smaller Scottish islands to the south. The monastery is dedicated to some Christian saint whose name you don't catch and don't care about. What matters is that it's reportedly wealthy, receiving tithes from local chieftains, and it's isolated on a small island with no significant armed presence. The fisherman says the monks are peaceful, dedicated to prayer and scholarship, completely unprepared for violence. It's a perfect target. The journey south takes 2 days of hard sailing, the wind favorable enough that you're rowing only intermittently. The mood aboard has shifted palpably. The veterans are checking their weapons with renewed focus, sharpening axes and swords, testing shield straps, preparing for combat. The younger raiders are quieter, more tense, and you can see your own nervousness reflected in their faces. This is it. This is what you came for. Within a day, maybe 2, you'll be charging up a beach into your first raid. Your father's mail shirt feels heavier than usual as you check it for the dozenth time, making sure the rings are intact, that nothing has corroded from the salt spray. Your axe is sharp, the edge honed until you can shave the hair on your arm with it. Your shield is sound, the linden wood unmarred, the iron boss firmly attached. Your spear is straight, the point wicked and sharp. Everything is ready. You're as prepared as equipment can make you. The question is whether you're mentally prepared, and you won't know the answer until the moment arrives. Gunnar, the experienced warrior who rows ahead of you, notices your nervousness and speaks to you for the first time beyond terse commands. "First raid?" "Yes." "You'll be terrified when we beach. Your heart will be hammering so hard you think it might burst. Your hands will shake. You might piss yourself. Some men do, first time. Don't be ashamed of that. Fear is natural. What matters is what you do despite the fear." He pauses, checking his own axe, then continues. "When we beach, You follow me. Stay close. Stay behind your shield. Do what I do. Don't run ahead trying to prove your courage. Don't fall behind trying to stay safe. Just stay with me, stay in formation, and you'll probably survive. Probably. The probably hangs in the air. There are no guarantees. Men die on raids, even experienced men, even when everything goes according to plan. A slip on wet rocks, a lucky blow from a defender, an ambush you didn't anticipate. Death comes quickly and randomly in combat. But Gunner's advice is sound, and you feel marginally better for having it. Having an experienced warrior willing to watch over you might make the difference between surviving and dying. That night, you beach on an uninhabited islet, making a cold camp with no fire because you're now in enemy waters and smoke might alert potential targets or defenders. The evening meal is the usual dried fish and hard bread, but you can barely eat, your stomach knotted with anticipation and dread. Tomorrow morning, according to Thorstein, you'll reach the monastery. The raid will happen tomorrow. You can't sleep. You lie in your assigned spot on the beach, wrapped in your cloak, staring at the stars, and your mind won't stop racing. You imagine the raid in elaborate detail, the beach landing, the charge, the combat. In some versions you fight heroically and survive. In others you're cut down immediately, a spear through your throat before you even reach the monastery buildings. You imagine your mother receiving news of your death. Imagine your body being dumped into the sea because there's no time to bring corpses home. You imagine returning triumphant with silver. Imagine the respect in your father's eyes. Imagine using your share of the plunder to attract a good marriage prospect. The scenarios spin through your head, none of them settling into anything like certainty or comfort. And eventually exhaustion overtakes anxiety, and you slip into uneasy sleep, filled with fragmented dreams of violence and drowning and your mother weeping. Morning comes too quickly, and not quickly enough simultaneously. You wake to grey dawn and the boatswain's pipe calling everyone to the ship. The mood is grim and focused. Men check their weapons one final time, help each other into mail shirts, adjust helmet straps. You're wearing your mail, and the weight is oppressive but reassuring. The iron rings might save your life today. Your helmet, a simple conical iron cap, sits heavy on your head. Your shield is strapped to your back for the rowing. Your axe is at your hip, your spear laid along the length of the ship where you can grab it quickly. The sail is raised and the ship moves south, cutting through morning mist, heading toward an island that's now visible on the horizon, a dark hump of land against grey sky. Thorstein steers toward it with the confidence of a man who knows exactly where he's going, following the fisherman's directions, looking for the monastery that supposedly sits on the island's southern shore. And then you see it. As the mist begins to lift and the ship rounds a rocky headland, the monastery comes into view. It's built of stone, unusual for this region where most buildings are wood, and it sits on a slight rise above a beach that's perfect for landing a longship. The monastery consists of a church with a wooden cross mounted on its peak, several smaller buildings that might be dormitories or workshops, and a low stone wall that's clearly decorative rather than defensive. There are no fortifications, no warriors visible, no preparation for attack. The monks had no warning, no reason to expect violence on this peaceful morning. The dragon prow of the ship turns toward the beach. The sail comes down. Oars are shipped and everyone rows, driving the ship toward the shore with maximum speed. You can see figures now, monks in their robes, some working in a garden near the monastery, others walking between buildings. A few have noticed the ship and are standing still, watching. They don't run. They don't sound alarms. They're simply watching, curious perhaps, or maybe not understanding what they're seeing until it's too late. Thorstein's voice cuts through the sound of oars and breathing. "When we beach, shields up and follow me. We want silver, gold, weapons, quality cloth, anything valuable and portable. No burning unless I give the order. Smoke will bring defenders from the mainland. Fast in, fast out. Fight anyone who resists, but we're not here for killing. We're here for plunder. Move!" The ship is close now, close enough that you can see individual faces among the monks. An older man in a richer robe, perhaps the abbot, has stepped forward and is raising his hand, maybe in greeting, maybe in blessing. He still doesn't understand. Or he understands but believes his God will protect him. He's wrong. The ship hits the beach with a grinding crunch, the bow riding up onto the sand. Men are already moving, grabbing shields, grabbing weapons, leaping over the sides into the shallows. You move with them, muscle memory from practice drills taking over. Your shield comes off your back, your axe is in your hand, and you're in the water. Cold surf around your calves. Then your feet hit sand, and you're running up the beach with 34 other warriors. And the terror Gunnar predicted is there, your heart hammering. But so is something else. Excitement, anticipation, the strange battle joy that you've heard about, but never felt. The monks are scattering now, some running toward the monastery, others fleeing toward the far side of the island, a few just standing frozen in shock. Your crew isn't chasing them yet, just moving in a coordinated group toward the main buildings. Thorstein is shouting orders, directing men toward different structures, and you follow Gunnar as instructed, staying close behind his shield, your own shield up, protecting your left side. The older monk, the abbot, is still standing his ground, and he's speaking now. Words you don't understand. Latin, maybe, or the local Celtic dialect. But his tone is clear. He's pleading, commanding, trying to use his authority or his god's power to stop what's happening. Thorstein walks past him without acknowledgement, heading toward the church, and the abbot grabs his arm, trying to physically stop him. Thorstein spins and punches the abbot in the face with the boss of his shield, a brutal strike that drops the older man like a felled tree. Blood pours from his broken nose, and he's not moving, maybe unconscious, maybe dead. You can't tell, and there's no time to think about it because you're moving forward, following Gunnar through the monastery entrance, and you're inside. The church is dim after the morning brightness, stone walls and a few narrow windows providing minimal light. There are monks inside, maybe a dozen, and they're gathered around the altar in what might be prayer or might be a desperate attempt to seek their god's protection. They're unarmed, no weapons visible, just men in robes clutching wooden crosses or prayer books, and they're looking at you with terror and incomprehension. Gunnar ignores them and heads straight for the altar, which is covered in cloth. Good quality wool, you note automatically. And there are metal objects on it. A silver chalice, a bronze cross, candlesticks that might be silver or might be brass, harder to tell in the dim light. He sweeps these items into a leather bag he's carried for this purpose, working quickly and efficiently, and you're standing there with your axe raised, watching the monks, waiting for someone to resist. But they don't. They just stand there praying or weeping, and you realize with a sudden sick clarity that they're not going to fight. They're completely helpless. One of them approaches you, a young monk, maybe your age, and he's speaking in accented Norse. He's actually learned your language, and he's saying, "Please, please, we are men of God. We have done you no harm. Please don't hurt us." His face is pale with terror, but he's trying to reason with you, to appeal to whatever mercy or humanity he thinks you might possess. You stare at him, axe still raised, and you don't know what to do. This isn't what you imagined. You imagined combat, fighting warriors, testing yourself against armed opponents. This is just theft, taking things from terrified, unarmed men who can't defend themselves, and the glory you'd imagined is absent, replaced by something that feels uncomfortably like shame. Gunnar finishes looting the altar and moves toward a side room where there might be more valuables stored. He glances back at you. Watch them. If any try to leave or raise alarm, stop them. Non-lethally if possible, but stop them. Then he's gone into the side room, and you're alone with the monks. The young monk is still talking, pleading, and you tell him harshly, "Shut up and stay still. No one has to die here if you don't resist." Your voice sounds strange to your own ears, harder than you feel, trying to sound like a warrior when you feel like a boy robbing old men. Outside you can hear shouting, both Norse and the local language, sounds of wooden doors being broken, the crash of furniture being overturned, men searching for hidden valuables. One of the other buildings is housing dormitories or storage, and your crew is systematically ransacking it, taking anything valuable or useful. Someone has found the monastery's stores of food, and dried fish and grain are being loaded onto the ship, not glamorous plunder, but valuable nonetheless, replenishing your supplies. Gunnar emerges from the side room with another bag of items. More silver church implements, some books with jeweled covers that are worthless as books, but valuable for the gems and precious metals in the binding, some fine vestments that can be sold. "Good haul," he says with satisfaction. "Check that corner, see if there's anything hidden." You move to the indicated corner, still watching the monks, and there's a wooden chest there, locked. You try to force it open with your axe, wedging the blade under the lid, and it splinters open. Inside are more church treasures, silver coins, enough to make your heart race, and a golden cross embedded with what might be garnets or rubies, and more books, and quality linen cloth. You start transferring these items to your own bag, working quickly, and the weight of the silver is satisfying. Tangible proof that this raid is successful. A commotion outside draws your attention. You move to the church entrance, shield up, and you see that some of the monks tried to flee toward a boat on the far side of the island. Several of your crew caught them, and there's a brief ugly scene where the monks are beaten into submission and dragged back. One monk fought back, actually struck one of the raiders with a piece of driftwood, and he's now lying on the ground with his head split open, blood soaking into the sand. The first death of the raid, and it's a monk who just wanted to escape. You feel sick looking at the body, but there's no time to process it because Thorstein is calling for everyone to load up and prepare to leave. The raid has taken perhaps 30 minutes from beach landing to now, fast and efficient, and the ship is being loaded with plunder, bags of church silver, quality cloth, the monastery's food stores, everything valuable and portable. The monks who didn't flee are being gathered together, and there's a discussion happening among the senior raiders about what to do with them. Some are arguing for killing them all so they can't report the raid or identify the attackers. Others say killing monks is unnecessary and might anger their god or bring bad luck. Thorstein makes the decision. The monks live, but several of the younger, healthier ones are being taken as slaves. 4 monks are selected, bound with rope, and dragged toward the ship despite their protests and the anguished cries of their brothers. This is common practice, you know, intellectually. Slaves are valuable, can be sold for good silver in Scandinavian markets, and healthy young men make good slaves. But watching it happen, watching these men who've done nothing except dedicate their lives to their god being bound and forced onto the ship, their lives as free men ending in an instant, is harder than you expected. The young monk who spoke to you in Norse is one of those selected, and he's weeping, begging to be left, saying he has family nearby, he has people who depend on him, but his pleas are ignored, and he's thrown into the ship with the others. The monastery is left ransacked but standing. Thorstein decided against burning it because the smoke would be visible from the mainland and might bring armed response before you can get away. Better to leave it intact, take what you came for, and disappear. The surviving monks are gathering around the body of their brother who was killed, and the abbot is conscious now, his face a mess of blood and broken bone, being tended by other monks. They watch as you push the ship back into the water, as the crew boards, as the oars come out, and you start rowing away from the beach. You take your position at your bench, your bag of plunder secured in your sea chest, and you row mechanically, watching the monastery recede. The monks are still visible on the beach, a cluster of robed figures standing amid the wreckage of their lives, and you wonder what they're thinking, whether they're praying for vengeance, or praying for your souls, or just praying for understanding of why their God allowed this to happen. The 4 captured monks are in the bottom of the ship, bound and guarded, still weeping or praying, or both. They'll be rowed all the way back to Norway, then sold to whoever will pay for them. They'll spend the rest of their lives as slaves, property of whoever buys them, and this is considered perfectly normal, acceptable, a legitimate result of a successful raid. Once you're clear of the island and into open water, the mood on the ship changes dramatically. Men are laughing, celebrating, examining the plunder, congratulating each other on a successful raid. Your share will be calculated later based on your status as a first-time raider, but even the junior share should be substantial. You participated in a successful raid, proved you could function under pressure, didn't panic or freeze, and now you have tangible proof of success, silver and goods that represent wealth and status. Your brother Leif is grinning wildly, showing off a silver armband he claims to have taken from the monastery stores. Other men are comparing their hauls, arguing good-naturedly about who found the best items. Thorstein is pleased, you can tell, nodding with satisfaction as he calculates the total value of the raid. No one was seriously injured on your side. A few minor cuts, nothing significant, and 1 enemy dead, monks not being counted as real opponents. By raiding standards, this was perfect. But you can't quite join the celebration. You stand at your rowing position, mechanically pulling the oar, and you keep seeing the young monk's face, hearing his pleading. You keep seeing the body on the beach, blood in the sand. You keep thinking about the 4 bound men in the bottom of the ship, their lives destroyed in 30 minutes. This is what you came for, what you wanted, the chance to go Viking and gain wealth and reputation. You've succeeded. Your first raid was successful. You survived, you functioned, you proved yourself. So why do you feel sick? Why isn't the triumph overwhelming the unease? Gunnar notices your expression and claps you on the shoulder. First raid is always strange. You'll get used to it. It gets easier. Does it get easier? Should it get easier? You don't know, and there's no one you can ask these questions without sounding weak or unmanly. So you just nod and keep rowing, the monastery disappearing behind you, the weight of silver in your sea chest, tangible and real, and somehow not satisfying in the way you'd imagined. The wind picks up and the sail is raised, and the ship speeds north, heading back toward the Shetlands, or perhaps directly toward Norway if conditions remain favorable. You've been on the raid for a week now. You've crossed the ocean, participated in your first raid, shed no blood yourself, but witnessed bloodshed, taken plunder, captured slaves, done everything that Viking raiders do. You're a warrior now, by the standards of your people. You've proven yourself. Your father will be proud when you return with your share of the silver. Your mother will be relieved you survived. Your reputation will be established. You went Viking. You succeeded. You can now speak among men as someone who's proven himself. Marriage prospects will improve because you have wealth to offer. Your life trajectory has been established in a single successful raid. But the young monk's face keeps appearing in your mind, his pleading voice, his despair as he was bound and taken. The body on the beach, the abbot's broken face, the ransacked church, the speed and efficiency with which comfortable lives were destroyed. This is glory. This is being a Viking. This is what you wanted. You row north through grey water, The dragon prow cutting through waves, the ship carrying its cargo of silver and slaves and warriors celebrating their success, and you try to feel the triumph you're supposed to feel. "You'll get used to it," Gunnar said. "It gets easier." You hope he's right. You suspect he's right. You're not sure you want him to be right. But you're a Viking raider now. This is your life. There will be more raids, more monasteries, more plunder, more bodies on beaches, more captured slaves, until you die, or get too old to fight, or accumulate enough wealth to retire to a farm and become respectable. The ship sails north. Behind you, monks bury their dead brother and try to rebuild their shattered lives. Ahead of you, Norway waits, and your family, and a reputation as a successful raider, and the knowledge that you can do this, that you can be hard enough, ruthless enough, Viking enough. Whether you want to be is a different question entirely, but wanting doesn't matter. You're 16 years old, you've just completed your first raid, and you're already planning your second. This is your life now. This is who you are becoming. The waves roll beneath the ship, carrying you toward whatever future awaits, and the dragon prow stares forward with carved wooden eyes, seeing nothing, judging nothing, just pointing the way home. You're standing on the beach 2 months later, staring at a pile of silver and goods that represents your share of the summer's raiding, and you're doing calculations in your head that would have seemed like fantasy back in the spring. The summer has been profitable beyond anything you imagined. After that first monastery raid, your crew hit 3 more targets: another monastery on the Irish coast, a wealthy farmstead in the Hebrides, and a trading post on the Scottish mainland. 4 successful raids, minimal casualties on your side, and plunder that's made everyone aboard Wave Rider substantially richer. Your share, as a first-year raider, is smaller than what the experienced men receive, but it's still more wealth than you could have earned in 5 years of farming. There's silver, both coin and hack silver, cut pieces of jewelry and plate that can be weighed and used as currency. There are 3 arm rings of good quality silver that you can wear as displays of wealth and status. There's a length of fine English wool cloth, dyed a deep blue, worth a substantial amount. There are tools, a good quality axe head, better than the one you own, and a draw knife for woodworking. There's even a small piece of amber, translucent gold, that you can give as a gift or sell. The division of plunder happened yesterday, with Thorstein overseeing the process according to the rules established before the voyage began. The shares were calculated based on status and contribution. Thorstein, as captain and shipowner, takes the largest share. The experienced warriors take full shares. You and the other first-year raiders take half shares. It's fair by Viking standards, and no one disputes the division. The total haul from the summer's raiding is substantial enough that even the half shares are impressive. The 4 captured monks from the first raid were sold 2 weeks ago at a slave market in Hedeby, the great trading port where Scandinavians, Germans, Slavs, and others meet to exchange goods. The monks brought good prices. Healthy young men who can read and write are valuable, potentially useful as scribes or translators, or simply as prestige possessions for wealthy households. The silver from their sale was divided among the crew, adding to everyone's shares. You try not to think about what happened to them, where they ended up, whether they're still alive. It's easier not to think about it. Your father is examining your plunder with evident satisfaction, running his hands over the silver, testing the weight of the arm rings. "This is excellent, Bjorn. More than I brought back from my first summer. You've done well." The approval in his voice is something you've craved your entire life, and now that you have it, it feels both validating and hollow somehow. You did well. You proved yourself. You're a successful raider. But the cost of that success sits uneasily in your stomach, memories of the raids that you can't quite reconcile with the pride you're supposed to feel. The summer wasn't all violence. Most of the time was spent sailing, searching for targets, making camp on beaches, enduring the endless rhythm of the sea. You became accustomed to the ship's motion, to the constant hunger and discomfort, to sleeping in wet clothes and eating dried fish. Your hands developed thick calluses from the oars. Your body became leaner and harder from the physical labor and inadequate diet. You learned to navigate by stars and wave patterns, absorbing knowledge from Thorstein and the experienced sailors. You learned to read weather, to recognize when storms were coming, to judge wind and current. The second raid was easier than the first, psychologically. Another monastery, this one on the Irish coast, even less defended than the first. You knew what to expect this time, knew the rhythm of the raid, the beach landing, the charge, the systematic looting, the captured slaves. It was still violence, still theft, but the shock was gone. You functioned efficiently, followed orders, took your share of the plunder. The young monks pleading in their incomprehensible language didn't affect you as much. You were becoming hardened, developing the calluses of the soul that match the calluses on your hands. The third raid was different. The target was a wealthy farmstead on one of the Hebridean islands, and unlike the monasteries, this place had defenders. The farmer and his 3 adult sons, along with several workers. They fought back. You experienced real combat for the first time, and it was nothing like the training, nothing like you imagined. It was chaos and terror and confusion, and someone tried to kill you, actually tried to drive a spear through your chest, and only Gunnar's intervention saved you, his axe taking the man's arm off at the elbow in a spray of blood that soaked you both. You killed your first person during that raid. A defender came at you with a wood axe, a man perhaps 40, defending his home, and your spear caught him in the throat almost by accident, a panicked thrust that happened to connect, and he went down gurgling and drowning in his own blood. You stood there frozen, watching him die, until Gunnar shoved you forward and screamed at you to keep moving. Later, after the raid, after you'd loaded the plunder, livestock, grain, tools, everything valuable, you vomited over the side of the ship, shaking, unable to stop seeing the man's face, the surprise in his eyes, the blood. Gunnar told you it was normal, that everyone reacts badly to their first kill, that it gets easier. He was right about the easier part. The fourth raid, when you had to fight off defenders at the trading post, you killed again. A young man, maybe 20, and this time you felt less. The shock was diminished. You were becoming what you needed to become. A warrior who can kill without falling apart, who can function in combat, who can do what's necessary and move on. The slaves from the various raids were collected and guarded, a total of 9 people by the end of the summer. Monks, a farmer's daughter who would fetch a high price as a concubine or servant, 2 young men from the trading post. They were kept in the ship, bound and miserable, fed minimally, treated as cargo because that's what they were. You learned to stop seeing them as people, to view them as simply part of the plunder, valuable goods to be transported and sold. This mental separation was necessary for your sanity, and you achieved it with disturbing ease. Not everyone made it home. Eric, a young raider like yourself, fell overboard during a storm 2 weeks into the voyage. The ship was in heavy seas, waves breaking over the sides, and Eric was on bail duty when a particularly large wave hit. He went over the side and disappeared into the dark water before anyone could grab him. The ship couldn't turn around in those conditions. Attempting a rescue would have risked everyone. So Eric just vanished, swallowed by the ocean, his body never recovered. His sea chest and equipment were divided among the crew. His share of the plunder will go to his family. His name will be remembered in stories for a few years, then fade. That's the reality of going Viking. Some men don't come home, and life continues without them. Halfdan, an experienced raider, took an infected wound during the third raid, a cut across his forearm that seemed minor at first, but developed into blood poisoning. He died screaming 3 days later, delirious with fever, his arm swollen to twice its normal size and stinking of corruption. His body was given to the sea with appropriate rites, prayers to the gods to guide him to Valhalla, and his equipment and share were divided like Eric's. 2 men out of 35 lost over the summer is actually good odds, everyone agreed. Some raiding voyages lose half their crew. You were lucky. Your brother Leif thrived during the raiding. He distinguished himself in combat, earning praise from Thorstein and the veterans, accumulating enough plunder that he's now a wealthy man by your community's standards. He's already talking about next summer, about joining a larger expedition, maybe going on the great raids to Francia or even the Mediterranean. The raiding has awakened something in him, a love of the violence and adventure and freedom of Viking life. He's found his calling, and you can see he'll probably die doing this, either killed in combat or drowned in a storm, but he's happy in a way you've never seen him before. You're less certain about your own future. You've proven you can do this, survive the sea voyages, function in combat, take plunder, kill when necessary. Your reputation is established. You have wealth now, enough to improve your marriage prospects substantially. Your father is proud. The community respects you as a warrior. Everything you wanted from going Viking, you've achieved in a single summer. So why don't you feel satisfied? Why does the thought of doing this again next summer fill you with something closer to dread than excitement? The plunder division concluded, you load your share into a cart and bring it back to the family farmstead. Your mother weeps when she sees you alive and whole, holds you tightly, examines you for injuries she can treat. You have scars now, a cut across your shoulder from the third raid that healed but left a visible mark, various smaller scars from minor wounds and accidents. Your body is changed, leaner and harder, and your face has changed too, something in your eyes that wasn't there before. Your mother notices but says nothing, just holds you and thanks the gods you survived. The community gathers that evening for a feast celebrating the raiders' return. Ale flows freely. Meat is roasted. Stories are told, the raids transformed in the telling into heroic adventures, the violence and fear edited out, replaced by cunning tactics and glorious combat. Thorstein is praised for his leadership. The experienced warriors are honored for their prowess. Even you and the other first-year raiders receive recognition, toasts to your courage, acknowledgement that you've joined the ranks of proven warriors. You drink and eat and accept the congratulations, and you tell the expected stories about the raids, carefully edited versions that emphasize the adventure and minimize the ugliness. No one wants to hear about the pleading monks or the infected wounds or the vomiting after your first kill. They want to hear about dragon ships and treasure and victory, and that's what you give them. The truth is for you to carry alone. The silver allows you to make improvements to the family farm. Your father uses part of the collective family earnings to buy additional livestock, to repair buildings that have been deteriorating, to purchase tools of better quality. Your own share goes partly into the family stores and partly into your personal hoard, buried in a location you share only with your father, insurance against future needs. This is how wealth is accumulated in Viking society. Through raiding when you're young and strong, converted into land and livestock and portable wealth that can be hidden or traded. Marriage prospects improve immediately. Your mother begins receiving inquiries from families with daughters of marriageable age, families that before would have considered you unsuitable because you had no wealth or prospects. Now you're a proven warrior with silver to your name, and suddenly you're an attractive match. Your mother is delighted, already planning, discussing potential brides with your father, evaluating families and alliances. You're expected to marry soon, probably next spring, to start your own household with your share of the plunder providing the foundation. One evening, a few weeks after your return, you're sitting with your father and Uncle Thorstein, drinking ale, discussing the summer's raids. The conversation turns to plans for next year, and Thorstein is already organizing another voyage. "Bjorn should come again," he says. "He proved himself this summer. Another season or two and he'll be ready to lead his own crew." Your father agrees enthusiastically. 2 or 3 more successful summers, and Bjorn will have enough wealth to establish himself properly, maybe even buy land outright rather than clearing new ground. The opportunities are substantial for young men willing to take the risks. They're planning your future, assuming you'll continue raiding, that you'll make it your career until you've accumulated enough wealth to retire to respectability. This is the path they envision. Raid for 5 or 10 years, accumulate substantial wealth, marry well, establish a prosperous farm, spend your later years as a respected member of the community, your raiding days becoming stories told at feasts. It's a good plan, a proven path to success. But sitting there listening to them plan your future, you realize you don't want to go back. The thought of another summer at sea, another series of raids, more violence and fear, and the slow hardening of your soul into something you don't want to become. You don't want it. The first summer was enough. You proved yourself. You have wealth. But you don't want to do it again. You can't say this. Refusing to go Viking again after a successful first summer would be seen as cowardice, as weakness, as shameful. Young men who go once and refuse to go again are mocked, called soft, their masculinity questioned. You'd lose the respect you just earned. Your reputation would be damaged beyond repair. And practically speaking, one summer's plunder isn't enough to fully establish yourself. You need more wealth to truly secure your future. So you nod along with the planning. Agree that next summer you'll join Thorstein's crew again. Accept the expectations placed on you. But inside, you're already wondering if there's another path, some way to build wealth and reputation without becoming the kind of man who can efficiently raid monasteries and enslave prisoners and kill defenders of their own homes without feeling anything. The problem is that there isn't another path. Not really. For a landless younger son in Viking society, raiding is the only realistic way to accumulate significant wealth. You can farm marginal land and stay poor. You can become a craftsman if you have the skills, but that's slow and uncertain. You can trade, but trade requires capital you don't have. Raiding is the obvious path, the proven path, the path your father took, your uncle takes, your brother is following enthusiastically. Winter arrives, and with it comes the season when Vikings stay home, when the seas are too dangerous for voyaging, when men become farmers again. You fall into the rhythm of farm work, tending livestock, repairing buildings, processing food for storage, all the endless tasks of maintaining a farmstead through the cold months. It's peaceful in a way you'd forgotten, quiet, safe, predictable. No one is trying to kill you. You sleep in a warm house instead of on a ship's deck. You eat proper cooked food instead of dried fish. It's boring compared to raiding, but boring feels good right now. Your mother brings up marriage repeatedly through the winter. There's a girl from a neighboring farm, Astrid, whose family has expressed interest. She's 17, considered pretty, from a respectable family, and the match would be advantageous for both families. Meetings are arranged, carefully chaperoned, where you and Astrid can speak briefly and evaluate each other. She seems pleasant enough, quiet, dutiful, exactly what a Viking wife is supposed to be. She doesn't ask about the raiding, which is good because you don't want to talk about it. The marriage is arranged for spring, before the raiding season begins. Your silver will provide a good bride price, and Astrid's family is providing a modest dowry. You'll establish a household on a section of your father's land, building a house through the winter, preparing to start your married life. This is what success looks like. Wealth from raiding, converted into marriage and land, and the beginnings of your own farm. This is what you wanted. But at night, sometimes you dream about the raids. You see the young monk's face, hear his pleading. You see the man whose throat you pierced with your spear, drowning in his own blood. You see the captured slaves bound in the ship's bottom. You wake sweating and disoriented, the dreams fading but leaving unease in their wake. Gunnar said it gets easier, that you get used to it. Maybe he was right. Maybe these dreams will fade with time and repeated exposure. Maybe next summer will be easier, the violence less troubling, the moral questions quieter. Or maybe you'll become like some of the older raiders you met, men with dead eyes who seem barely human anymore, who function efficiently in violence because they've killed whatever part of them used to feel empathy or guilt. Maybe that's what being a successful long-term Viking raider requires, killing your humanity piece by piece until you're just a weapon, effective and empty. You're 16 years old, approaching 17. You've gone Viking once, proven yourself a warrior, accumulated wealth, improved your status, secured a good marriage. By the standards of your society, you're succeeding. You should be proud. Your family is proud. The community respects you. Everything is going according to plan. So why do you lie awake at night, wondering what happened to the young monk who spoke Norse, whether he's still alive, whether he curses you in his prayers to his god? Why does the silver in your buried hoard feel heavier than it should, weighted with memories of how you earned it? Why does the thought of next summer's raiding fill you with dread? These are questions you can't ask anyone, not your father or brother or Gunnar or even Astrid once you're married. These are questions that mark you as weak, as unsuitable for Viking life, as someone who doesn't have what it takes to be a successful raider. So you bury them along with your silver, hide them away, present the face of a successful young warrior to the world. Spring will come. The ship will be prepared for another voyage. Thorstein will gather his crew, and you'll be among them, because refusing is impossible, because you need more wealth to truly secure your future, because this is what men do. You'll sail west again to enemy shores. You'll raid more monasteries and farms. You'll kill more defenders. You'll capture more slaves. You'll bring back more plunder. And maybe, as Gunnar promised, it will get easier. Maybe the dreams will fade. Maybe you'll become hard enough that the violence stops troubling you. Or maybe you'll just become very good at pretending, at functioning despite the unease, at being the warrior everyone expects you to be, while some part of you remains the boy who vomited after his first kill, who can't forget the pleading monk, who wonders if glory and silver are worth what they cost. You stand at the threshold of your nearly completed house, looking at the framework that will become your marital home, built with silver earned from raiding. This is success. This is what you wanted. This is what being a Viking warrior provides: wealth, status, respect, marriage, a future. You tell yourself you're lucky. You tell yourself to be grateful. You tell yourself that next summer will be easier, that you'll adjust, that you'll become what you need to be. You tell yourself a lot of things as winter ends and spring approaches and the raiding season looms. Whether you believe them is a different question entirely. You're sitting by the fire in your father's hall on a cold January evening, and the conversation has turned to stories, as it always does during the long winter nights. Old Thorvald, a veteran raider now in his 60s, too old for voyaging but still sharp in mind, is telling tales of his youth, of raids 40 years ago when the English coast was undefended and the monasteries were fat with treasure that no one had thought to protect. The younger men listen with attention, absorbing the stories, learning the geography and tactics. And you're listening too, but you're also watching the faces, noticing who's excited and who looks troubled. Your brother Leif is hanging on every word, his eyes bright with anticipation. He's already committed to next summer's voyage, already planning to go every summer until he's too old or too dead to continue. This is his life now, his identity, and he wears it proudly. Sitting next to him is Astrid, your betrothed, her face carefully neutral as she listens to stories of violence and plunder. You've been married for 3 months now, weed in April, just before the raiding season would have begun, and she's already pregnant with your first child, due in late summer. The pregnancy changed everything. When your mother confirmed it in May, just as Thorstein was preparing Wave Rider for another voyage, you made a decision that shocked everyone. You told Thorstein you wouldn't be joining the crew this summer. Not because you were afraid, not because you'd failed at raiding, but because your wife was pregnant and you needed to stay to manage the farm and prepare for fatherhood. The excuse was thin. Plenty of men raid while their wives are pregnant. It's completely normal. But it was acceptable enough that you couldn't be directly accused of cowardice. Thorstein was disappointed but understanding. Your father was less understanding, pulling you aside for a conversation that bordered on confrontation. You're throwing away your reputation. 1 successful summer isn't enough to establish yourself. You need 3, 4, 5 summers of raiding to accumulate real wealth, to become a man of substance. Staying home because your wife is pregnant it's not what warriors do. You held firm despite his disapproval. I have enough from last summer to improve our farm. I can trade, I can work, I can build wealth other ways. And I want to be here when my child is born, not halfway to Ireland wondering if I'll ever meet my son or daughter. It wasn't the full truth. The full truth being that you couldn't bear the thought of another summer of raids, another season of violence and captured slaves and hardening yourself further. But it was true enough. Your father eventually accepted it, though you could see the disappointment in his eyes, the judgment that you were soft, that you lacked the hardness necessary for sustained success in Viking society. Your mother was secretly relieved, you could tell, though she couldn't say so openly. Losing you to the sea or to combat would have devastated her, and having you home, safe, was worth the social cost of your reputation taking a hit. The social cost was real. When Thorstein's crew sailed in June without you, when other young men your age were aboard seeking glory and plunder while you stayed home tending farm animals, there was talk. Not open accusation. You'd proven yourself the previous summer. You had the scars and the silver to show for it. But whispered doubts. Is Bjorn getting soft? Is he afraid? Did one summer break him? The questions circulated through the community, damaging the reputation you'd worked so hard to build. Leif tried to convince you to change your mind, to join the voyage even briefly, but you refused. Go, you told him. Bring back enough glory for both of us. I'll be here managing the farm, building our future in different ways. He left frustrated with you, unable to understand why you'd give up the raiding life after tasting success. To him, raiding was freedom and adventure and the fullest expression of manhood. To you, it had become something you needed to escape. The summer without raiding was strange. You worked the farm with an intensity that surprised everyone, clearing new land, improving buildings, caring for livestock with obsessive attention to detail. You were trying to prove something, that wealth could be built through labor rather than violence, that success didn't require raiding, that you could be respected without annual voyages to plunder enemy shores. The work was hard, exhausting, but it didn't leave you with nightmares. Your hands developed different calluses, from tools and rope rather than oars and weapons. Astrid began to understand you in ways you hadn't expected. She was quiet and dutiful as expected, but she was also observant. And one night, early in the summer when you woke, gasping from another nightmare about the raids, she held you and asked quietly what you'd seen. You told her, not everything, but some of it. The monasteries, the slaves, the killing. the way you'd felt watching the young monk plead. She listened without judgment, just held you, and said, "You don't have to go back. We'll find other ways." Her support meant more than you could express. In a culture that values martial prowess and raiding success above almost everything, having someone who understood your reluctance, who didn't judge you for it, was precious beyond silver. You fell in love with her properly that night, not the arranged marriage affection, but genuine love, and you promised yourself and her that you'd find ways to build your household's prosperity without returning to the raiding life. But that prosperity was proving harder to build than you'd hoped. Farm work generates subsistence, rarely surplus. You tried trading, taking surplus goods to local markets, trying to develop connections with merchants. But trade requires capital and connections you don't have. You tried craft work, developing your skills in woodworking and basic smithing, but these skills take years to master, and you're competing with established craftsmen. By autumn, it was clear that while you could survive through farming and small-scale trade, you wouldn't accumulate the kind of wealth that raiding provides. Leif returned in September with stories of a successful summer, 3 raids, good plunder, only 1 man lost. He was wealthier now, wearing new silver arm rings, carrying a sword he'd taken from a Scottish chieftain they'd ambushed. He was also changed, harder and more distant, something in his eyes that reminded you of the oldest raiders, the ones who'd been doing this for decades. He looked at your farm improvements and your quiet domestic life with something between pity and contempt. "You could have been there," he said. "You could have shared in this. Instead, you stayed home playing farmer while real men won glory." The accusation stung because part of you agreed with it. Part of you felt ashamed of choosing safety over adventure, domesticity over raiding. But a larger part of you looked at what your brother was becoming, the deadness in his eyes, the casual way he discussed killing, the ease with which he wore silver taken from people he'd robbed, and felt relief that you weren't following that path. Your daughter was born in late August, a healthy girl you named Sigrid, after your mother's mother. Holding her tiny body, looking at her face, you felt a profound certainty that you'd made the right choice. If you'd been on the raid, you might have died, and she'd have grown up fatherless. If you'd survived, you'd have missed her birth, missed these first months of her life. The silver you might have earned didn't seem worth what you'd have lost, but the financial reality was stark. Your household was surviving but not thriving. Your father's farm could support your small family, but you were dependent on his generosity rather than truly independent. The section of land you'd been given was adequate, but not large enough to generate significant surplus. Your trading ventures brought in small amounts, supplementing but not replacing the income that raiding would have provided. By winter, it was clear that you needed to make a decision about next summer. Now it's January, and Thorstein is in your father's hall, and he's recruiting for another voyage. "We're going further this year," he's saying, "down to the Frankish coast, maybe even to the Mediterranean. The monasteries there are even richer than in England and Ireland. The Byzantine Empire pays well for northern warriors, the Varangian Guard. We could raid, or we could offer ourselves as mercenaries. Either way, the opportunities are substantial." He's looking at you as he says this, the question implicit. Will you join us this year? Will you return to raiding, or are you done? Your father is also looking at you, his expression complicated. Hope that you'll redeem yourself by returning to raiding, mixed with understanding that you have a wife and child to consider. Leif is watching you with open challenge in his eyes, daring you to prove you're not soft, that last year was just temporary caution rather than permanent retreat from Viking life. Astrid is nursing Sigrid in the corner, not participating in the conversation because women don't speak in these councils, but you can feel her watching you, knowing what you're thinking. You've discussed this in private over the past months. She's made it clear she won't force you either direction. If you need to raid to properly provide for the family, she'll support it, even though it terrifies her. But if you can find other ways, she'd prefer you stay. The unspoken truth is that she's already lost her father to raiding, dead in a storm when she was 12, and the thought of Sigrid growing up fatherless haunts both of you. The conversation in the hall continues around you. Other young men are committing to the voyage, excited about the prospects, drawn by Thorstein's descriptions of Frankish wealth and Mediterranean opportunities. Your cousin Bjorn, confusingly you share a name, is going on his first raid, and he's asking you for advice, looking at you with the same mixture of excitement and fear you felt 2 years ago. What can you tell him? That it's terrifying and exhilarating? That you'll be changed by it in ways you can't predict? That the silver you bring back will feel heavier than it should? You give him practical advice instead. Listen to the veterans. Stay in formation. Don't try to be a hero. He nods enthusiastically, seeing you as a successful raider because you survived your first summer and brought back plunder, not understanding that you're actually a cautionary tale, someone who did it once and couldn't stomach continuing. Thorstein addresses you directly finally. Bjorn, son of Eric. You proved yourself 2 years ago. You're a capable warrior. We'd value having you aboard for this voyage. The opportunities are significant. This could be the raid that sets you up for life, that gives you real independence and wealth. Will you join us? The hall has gone quiet, everyone waiting for your answer. This is a public moment, a test of your commitment to Viking values, a measurement of your courage and ambition. Saying no again will damage your reputation further, possibly irreparably. People will conclude you're not really a warrior, that you're just a farmer who happened to go raiding once. Your status in the community will decline. Your father will be ashamed. Leif will be disgusted. But saying yes means leaving Astrid and Sigrid for months, risking your life, participating again in violence that still haunts your dreams, continuing to become the kind of man who can efficiently raid and plunder and enslave. It means potentially dying and leaving your daughter fatherless. It means months of fear and discomfort and the risk of physical or psychological damage that might make you less capable as a husband and father even if you survive. You look at Astrid across the hall. She's not looking at you, deliberately giving you space to make your own decision. But her hands are tight on Sigrid's small body, protective and tense. You look at your father, seeing the hope and disappointment warring in his expression. You look at Leif, seeing the contempt he's trying to hide. You look at Thorstein, who's offering you redemption, a chance to prove you're still a warrior, still worthy of respect, and you make your decision. I'm honored by the offer, Thorstein, but I won't be joining this voyage. My household needs me here. My daughter is too young, my wife needs support, the farm needs work that I can't delegate. Perhaps in future years, when Sigrid is older, when my household is more established, I'll raid again. But not this year. The disappointment in the hall is palpable. Your father looks down, unable to meet your eyes. Leif shakes his head in disgust. The young men look at you with confusion. You're choosing farming over adventure, domestic duties over glory, safety over wealth. To them, it's incomprehensible. Thorstein nods with professional courtesy, but you can see he's written you off, no longer considering you a serious warrior. Only Astrid's expression changes, subtle relief crossing her face before she schools it back to neutrality. And old Thorvald, the veteran raider who's been mostly silent through the evening, catches your eye and gives you the smallest nod, an acknowledgement that might be approval or might be understanding, or might just be recognition of a choice he understands, even if others don't. The conversation moves on to other topics: who's joining the crew, what preparations are needed, what targets might be available. You're peripheral now, excluded from the planning, no longer part of the raiding company. Your father is making excuses for you to Thorstein. He'll come around, he's just being cautious with the new baby, he'll be ready in a year or 2. but you can hear the doubt in his voice, the recognition that you've probably made your final choice. Later, after the gathering breaks up and people are heading to their homes through the snow, your father pulls you aside for a private conversation. His face is troubled, aged beyond his years, and you can see he's struggling with what to say. I don't understand you, Bjorn. You have a gift for raiding. You proved that your first summer. You could be wealthy, respected, feared. Instead, you're choosing to be a farmer, to be ordinary, to throw away opportunities that most men would kill for. Why? You consider lying, offering excuses about family duties and farm necessities, but he deserves honesty. Because I don't want to become what successful raiders become. I've seen it, Father. I've seen the change in Leif, the deadness in the eyes of men who've been raiding for years. I killed men during my raids, and I can still see their faces. I captured slaves, and I still hear their pleading. The silver I brought back was valuable, but the cost was higher than I want to keep paying. Your father is silent for a long moment, and you can see him processing this, trying to understand a perspective that's foreign to his worldview. Finally, he speaks. When I was young, I went raiding because I had no choice. Our farm was even smaller then, barely supporting the family, and I was a younger son with no prospects. Raiding gave me the wealth to buy land, to marry your mother, to build what we have. I did what I had to do. The violence, the slaves, the killing. Yes, it was hard, but it was necessary. He pauses, then continues. Maybe you have more choices than I did. Your first raid was successful enough that you have some silver, some status. The farm is larger now than when I was your age. Maybe you can build a life without raiding, though it will be harder and slower. But understand, people will judge you. They'll see you as weak, as someone who couldn't handle the raiding life. Your status will suffer. Opportunities will close. Are you prepared for that? I am, you say, and you mean it. I'd rather be seen as weak and be able to sleep at night than be respected and haunted by what I've done. I'd rather be a successful farmer than a successful raider. I'd rather Sigrid grow up with a father who's present and alive than hear heroic stories about a father who died seeking glory. Your father sighs heavily. You're choosing a harder path than you realize. But you're a man now, with your own household. It's your choice to make. I hope you don't regret it. He grips your shoulder briefly, then walks away through the snow toward his hall, and you watch him go, knowing that you've disappointed him, knowing that your relationship has changed, but feeling certain that you've made the right choice. You return to your own small house, where Astrid is still awake despite the late hour, waiting to hear how the evening went. She doesn't ask directly. She's too tactful for that. But you tell her anyway. I said no. I'm not going raiding again. We'll build our life here, through farming and trade and whatever honest work we can find. It will be harder, but it will be ours, built without blood. She comes to you then, holds you tightly, and you feel her relief in the tension leaving her body. Thank you, she whispers. Not for staying. That was your choice to make. But for being the kind of man who can make that choice. Sigrid will grow up knowing her father. That's worth more than all the silver in the world. You hold your wife and think about your daughter sleeping in her cradle, and you know with absolute certainty that you've made the right decision. The cost will be high, damaged reputation, limited wealth, your father's disappointment, your brother's contempt, the judgment of the community. But the alternative cost, participating in more raids, accumulating more traumatic memories, becoming harder and more damaged with each voyage, is higher still. You're 20 years old, and you've already gone further in Viking life than many men. But you're stopping here. You're choosing the plough over the sword, the farm over the longship, the quiet life over glory. It's not the choice a hero makes. It's not the choice that gets you into the sagas. It's not even the choice that most men would respect. But it's your choice, and you're at peace with it. Outside, the snow continues to fall, covering the world in quiet white. In Sidor, your family sleeps safe and warm. And somewhere to the south, the monasteries still stand, wealthy and undefended, waiting for next summer's raids. But you won't be among the raiders. You've hung up your axe, beached your metaphorical longship, chosen a different path. Whether it's the right path, only time will tell. Whether you can build the life you want through farming and trade rather than raiding remains to be seen. But at least you'll build it without the weight of more blood on your hands, more slaves in your wake, more ghosts in your dreams. And that, you've decided, is worth everything you're giving up. The fire burns low. You bank it for the night and join your wife in bed. And for the first time in months, you sleep without nightmares. Tomorrow you'll begin building your life as a farmer, not a warrior. It won't be easy. It won't bring glory. But it will be yours, earned through honest work, and you can face yourself and your family without shame. That's enough. It has to be. You're 35 years old, standing in a field you've cleared with your own hands over the past 15 years, and you're watching your oldest son, Olaf, swing an axe at a tree trunk with the same intensity you once brought to combat training. He's 14, the age when boys start thinking seriously about their futures, and you know what he's thinking about because his Uncle Leif has been filling his head with stories of raiding, with tales of glory and silver and adventure. The same stories you heard at his age, the same seductive promises of wealth and reputation gained through violence. Olaf is your third child. After Sigrid came 2 sons. Olaf and then Eric, named for your father who died 5 years ago, still disappointed in you but at least having made a sort of peace with your choices before the end. You have 4 children now, actually. Sigrid is 17 and married, living on a nearby farm with her husband who's a craftsman, a blacksmith of growing reputation. Olaf at 14 is strong and capable, already doing a man's work on the farm. Eric is 11, quieter than his brother but clever with his hands. And Runa, your youngest, is 8, quick-witted and curious about everything. The farm has grown substantially over 15 years. The section your father gave you was adequate but small, and through relentless work, clearing forest, improving soil, careful management of livestock, you've made it productive. You've also bought additional land, small parcels acquired over years through trade and careful saving. Never the dramatic wealth accumulation that raiding provides, but steady incremental growth. You're not rich by any measure, but you're comfortable, established, your household securely above mere subsistence. The trade work helped. You developed a specialty in quality lumber, learning to identify the best trees, to fell and mill them efficiently, to deliver lumber of reliable quality to builders. It's not glamorous work, but it's profitable, and over years you built a reputation for reliability. You also became skilled in boat building, not the longships but smaller fishing vessels and cargo boats, work that uses your knowledge of ships from that one raiding summer. These skills, combined with farming, have provided steady income that's accumulated into modest prosperity. But it's been hard in ways that raiding would never have been hard. The social cost of refusing to raid after that first summer followed you for years. You were seen as weak, as someone who couldn't handle Viking life, and that reputation limited opportunities. Other men's sons were preferred for various ventures and partnerships because their fathers were proven warriors, while yours had gone Viking once and then retired to farming. You were excluded from certain social circles, from the gatherings where warriors drank and told stories and made plans. You became peripheral, not quite respectable, marked by your choices. Your brother Leif never forgave you. He went raiding every summer for 12 years, accumulating substantial wealth and a fearsome reputation. He's a successful warrior by every measure, owning significant land, married to a woman from a prominent family, respected and feared. But he's also damaged in ways you recognize but he refuses to acknowledge. His eyes have that deadness you saw developing 15 years ago, now fully established. He drinks heavily. He's harsh with his own sons, trying to forge them into warriors through violence and intimidation. His wife is quiet and submissive in a way that suggests fear rather than respect. He killed 17 men in combat over his raiding years, and you suspect the number haunts him even if he'd never admit it. You and Leif maintain minimal contact. He visits occasionally, usually when he's been drinking, and the visits are tense. He looks at your farm with barely concealed contempt. This is what you chose instead of glory? He talks about his raids, his victories, his wealth, always with an undercurrent of comparison, of proving that his choices were superior to yours. You don't argue. There's no point. You've each made your choices and built lives reflecting those choices, and neither of you will convince the other that your path was correct. But now Leif has been talking to Olaf, your oldest son, and you can see the effect. Olaf watches his uncle with admiration, listens to the raiding stories with shining eyes, and he's started asking questions. When can I go Viking? What's it like? Would I be good at it? The questions you hoped you'd never hear from your son. The questions that mean you need to have a conversation you've been dreading for years. You finish the field work and call Olaf to walk with you, away from the house where Astrid won't overhear. She knows this conversation is coming. You've discussed it at length in private, and she's as conflicted as you are. She doesn't want her son to go raiding, doesn't want him to face the dangers and moral compromises, but she also knows that forbidding it might just make him more determined. And besides, what right do you have to deny him opportunities you yourself took at his age? Your uncle has been talking to you, you say as you walk toward the forest boundary. It's not a question. Olaf nods, trying to look casual but unable to hide his excitement. He says I'm strong enough, that I'd do well as a raider. He says you were excellent your first summer, that you brought back more plunder than most first-timers. He says I could do even better because I'm bigger than you were at 14. You're silent for a moment, choosing your words carefully. Your uncle is right that I went raiding when I was 16. He's right that I was successful by the standards we measure these things. I brought back silver and goods. I proved I could fight. I earned respect. All of that is true. So you understand why I want to go? Olaf says eagerly. I could earn silver, help the family, build my own reputation. I could— Let me finish, you interrupt gently. I went raiding once, one summer, and then I stopped. Do you know why? Olaf hesitates. He's heard fragments of this over the years, picked up from overheard conversations and community gossip, but you've never discussed it directly with him. People say you got scared. Uncle Leif says you couldn't handle it, that you were too soft for Viking life. The accusation stings even after all these years, but you expected it. That's one interpretation. Here's another. I went raiding and I was successful at it. I survived, I fought effectively, I brought back plunder. But I also saw what raiding means, what it does to you, and what it does to the people you raid. Let me tell you some things your uncle probably didn't mention in his stories. You describe the first monastery raid, not the edited heroic version, but the reality. The terrified monks, the young man pleading in Norse, the captured slaves, the abbot's face after Thorstein broke it, the body on the beach. You describe killing your first man during the farmstead raid, watching him drown in his own blood, vomiting afterward from shock and horror. You describe the 9 slaves captured over that summer, bound and miserable in the ship, sold in Hedeby to unknown fates. You tell him about Eric going overboard in the storm, about Halfdan dying from the infected wound, about the nightmares that plagued you for years afterward. Olaf listens with growing discomfort, his excitement dimming. This isn't the version of raiding he's heard from his uncle. These details aren't in the heroic stories. But you won glory, he says, though with less certainty. You proved yourself. That matters, doesn't it? I proved I could kill people and take their property and enslave them. Yes. That's what Viking raiding is when you strip away the heroic language. It's theft and kidnapping backed by violence. The monks I raided had done nothing to me. The farmer whose throat I pierced was just defending his home and family. The slaves we took were just people in the wrong place at the wrong time. I did these things for silver. And yes, that silver helped establish our household, helped me marry your mother, helped build what we have. But the cost was higher than I wanted to keep paying. You pause, making sure he's really listening. Your uncle keeps raiding because he can accept that cost. Or maybe because he's learned not to think about it. I couldn't. After that first summer, the thought of doing it again, of accumulating more memories of violence and suffering, was unbearable. So I stopped. Yes, it damaged my reputation. Yes, people called me soft and weak. Yes, opportunities closed because I was seen as less than a real warrior. But I could sleep at night. I could look at myself without disgust. And I could be here, present for you and your siblings, not dead in some foreign land or psychologically destroyed by years of violence. Olaf is quiet, processing this. Finally he asks, "Do you regret going that one summer?" It's a good question. One you've asked yourself many times. I don't know. The silver from that summer helped establish us, that's undeniable. And I learned things about myself, that I could function under pressure, that I was braver than I thought, that I could survive hardship. But I also learned that I didn't want to be the kind of man who makes a career of violence. If I hadn't gone, I wouldn't have the specific nightmares I had for years, wouldn't have the memories that still surface occasionally. But I also wouldn't have known for certain that raiding wasn't for me, and I might have spent my life wondering if I'd been too cowardly to try. You stop walking and turn to face your son directly. Olaf, I can't forbid you from going Viking. You're nearly a man. You'll make your own choices soon. If you're determined to go, I'll help you prepare. I know what you'll need, what you'll face. But I'm asking you to really think about what you're choosing. Not the heroic stories your uncle tells, but the reality. You'll see people suffer. You'll cause that suffering. You'll do things that seem necessary in the moment, but haunt you afterward. You might die, leaving your mother and siblings grieving. Or you might survive, but become someone different, harder, more like your uncle. Uncle Leif is successful, Olaf protests, but weakly, as if trying to convince himself. He's wealthy and respected. He's a real warrior. Your uncle is wealthy and respected and completely dead inside, you say bluntly. Have you looked at his eyes? Really looked? Have you seen how much he drinks? Have you noticed how his wife and children are afraid of him? That's what 15 years of raiding does to many men. Not all. Some seem to handle it better. But many. Your uncle chose glory and silver over peace of mind, and he's living with the consequences. You start walking again, giving Olaf time to think. I chose differently. I chose this farm, this quiet life, being a lumber merchant and boat builder rather than a warrior. I chose being present for my family over seeking glory in foreign lands. The cost was reputation and limited wealth. We're comfortable but not rich, respected in some circles but not in the warrior culture. But the benefit was sleeping without nightmares, knowing my hands built things rather than destroyed them, being here for all of you. I don't know what to choose, Olaf says quietly, and you hear the confusion and uncertainty in his voice. The heroic stories are appealing, but the reality you've described is daunting. He's 14, trying to chart his life's course without enough experience to judge what he really wants. You don't have to decide today, you tell him. You have time. But I want you to spend that time really thinking, not just about the glory and silver, but about the full reality. Talk to your uncle, yes, but also talk to men like old Knut, who came back from raiding missing a leg. Talk to widow Ingrid, whose husband died in a storm during his second raid, leaving her with 4 children to raise alone. Get the full picture, not just the heroic version. You walk in silence for a while. Then Olaf asks another question. If I don't go Viking, how will I make my way in the world? I'm a younger son. Eric will inherit most of this farm eventually. I need to establish myself somehow. It's a fair question, the same question you faced at his age, the same pressure that drives younger sons toward raiding. There are other paths, though they're slower and harder. You could learn a trade. You're already good with woodworking. You could become a builder or boatwright. You could trade, though that requires capital we don't have much of. You could clear new land and establish your own farm, though that's years of brutal labor. You could work for wages, saving slowly. Or you could go Viking for a few summers, accumulate silver quickly, then use it to establish yourself in one of those other paths. That's what you did, Olaf points out. 1 summer of raiding, then building a life from there. Yes, and I'm not saying it was wrong exactly, just that I wish I'd found another way. The silver helped, but the psychological cost was high. Maybe you're stronger than I was, better able to handle it. Maybe you could raid for a few summers and come back intact, use the wealth wisely, transition to peaceful life. Or maybe you'd become like your uncle, unable to stop, the violence becoming your identity. I don't know. That's what you need to figure out. You've reached the forest boundary and you stop, looking out over your farm, the cleared fields, the well-maintained buildings, the livestock grazing peacefully. It's not dramatic or impressive by warrior standards, but it's solid, productive, built through honest work. This is what 15 years without raiding looks like, you say. Comfortable but not wealthy. Respectable in some ways but not in the warrior culture. Quiet, peaceful, safe, somewhat boring. Your uncle's life looks different. More wealth, more excitement, more status in certain circles, but also more damage, more ghosts, more numbness to replace feelings that became too painful. Olaf is looking at the farm with new eyes, perhaps seeing it not as boring and limiting, but as an achievement, something built without violence, something that will last. Did Mother influence your decision to stop raiding? He asks. She supported it, but it was my decision. She would have accepted me continuing to raid if I'd needed to, though it would have terrified her. But having her support made the social cost easier to bear. When people mocked me for choosing farming over glory, she reminded me what really mattered. When your grandfather was disappointed in me, she defended my choices. When the nightmares were bad, she helped me through them. I couldn't have built this life without her. Ragnhild, Olaf says quietly, naming a girl in a neighboring village who he's been noticing recently. Her father was a raider. He came back from his 5th summer so changed that his family barely recognized him. He's angry all the time now, violent when he drinks. Ragnhild is afraid of him. That's another cost of raiding that the heroic stories don't mention, you say. The damage to families, the trauma passed down to children, the relationships destroyed. Your uncle's sons are growing up with a violent, temperamental father who's trying to forge them into warriors through intimidation. Your cousins are fearful, aggressive, already showing signs of damage. That's what happens when men bring the violence home with them. You start walking back toward the house, the conversation winding down but not finished. This is something Olaf will need to think about for weeks or months, revisiting as he gathers more information and perspectives. I'm not telling you what to decide, you say as you approach the farm buildings. I'm asking you to really think about it, to get the full picture, to understand what you're choosing and what you're giving up either way. The decision is yours to make, and whatever you decide, I'll support you. But I wanted you to hear the reality, not just the heroic version." Olaf nods, his face troubled but thoughtful. "Thank you for telling me the truth. Uncle Leif's stories are exciting, but they're not complete, are they? He leaves things out. Everyone edits their stories to make themselves look better. I'm editing too, probably, emphasizing the costs because I want you to be careful, to not rush into a decision because glory and adventure sound exciting. The truth is probably somewhere between his heroic version and my cautionary one. Raiding is dangerous and morally complicated, but it's also a proven path to wealth for younger sons without better options. You'll have to weigh it all and decide what matters most to you. You reach the house where Astrid is preparing the evening meal, and your younger children are doing their chores, and everything is normal and peaceful and domestic. This is what you chose instead of glory. This quiet life, these ordinary moments, the knowledge that you've hurt no one in building your household. Whether it's enough, whether you made the right choice, you still don't know with absolute certainty, even after 15 years. But you've lived with your decision, and you can face yourself in the morning, and that's worth something. Olaf goes to help his siblings with their work, and Astrid catches your eye with a questioning look. "How did it go?" You shrug slightly. "We talked," he's thinking. "We'll see." She nods, accepting that this is a process, not a single conversation. Whatever Olaf decides, you'll face it together, as you've faced everything since you made the choice to stop raiding and build this life instead. The sun is setting over the farm you've built, the home you've created, the family you've raised. It's not a saga. No one will tell heroic stories about Bjorn the farmer who cleared fields and milled lumber and raised children. But it's your life, earned through honest work, unmarred by violence, and you've made peace with that choice. Whether your son will make the same choice remains to be seen. All you can do is give him the information to decide wisely, support whatever he chooses, and hope that he finds his own path to a life he can live with. The family gathers for the evening meal, all of you together around the fire, and this moment, this simple domestic peace, is what you chose over glory, and you've never regretted it. Not most days, anyway.